Hello, today I will be reviewing book 1 and 2 of the Fliers series by Laura May. She is an independent author and was kind enough to give me e-copies of the books so I could read them and review them honestly. And I hope this video doesn't end up being a repeat of the last book review where it slowly got darker and darker and darker until you couldn't even see my face. I'm going to do a basic overview of pros and cons without spoilers, and then just one rating at the end, and because they're two different books, and the next book, the last book in the trilogy, is coming out soon, so I really don't want to spoil anything. I just turned the light on in my room. What a concept. Fliers Book 1, titled Fliers, is about these people descended from fairies that look like humans, but they have the ability to fly, and they have multicolor eyes and stuff, and they have fairy companions. So you can already tell this is a fantasy book, and I adore fantasy, and this whole premise I really love. The story follows Sedana, if I'm pronouncing that right. She is a descendant, she is a flyer. She gets the terrible news that humans are now experimenting on people like her, like capturing her people, her flyer people, and experimenting on them to try and get the power for themselves, so like extract the power somehow. So she really wants to stop this. So like I said, the premise on its own, great. But as excited as I was to read this book, to get invested in this series, the first book, specifically the first chapter, it had so many cliches. Things you're supposed to stay away from in a first chapter. It opens with backstory, which isn't bad on its own at all. It opens with backstory of what happened to Sedana's parents. And then it moves on to like a regular day with the main character. That formula has been used plenty of times and well with other books, but for me, it made me a bit worried for the rest of the book. And the cliches didn't exactly go away, but as the plot picked up, I started getting less worried about that. I really do enjoy how the pacing is used with this, and I was so interested in the flyers themselves and how Sedana's life is. One of my biggest problems, I think, was the main character herself. Not that she was unlikable, I think I really like her, actually, but I learned that she's 60 years old. But the way she talks, I really had the impression she was a teenager or a young adult, because she says things like ew, and she rolls her eyes, and she says things that are typically juvenile or typically something the main character in a young adult book would say. So it really surprised me to once I learned that she was so old, to go back or to reflect on the dialogue I kept seeing and realize, oh, when she said this, that was coming out of the mouth of a 60-year-old. That's not something a 60-year-old would say. That's not how a 60-year-old would act. She seems very naive, which doesn't seem to be what's intended, because she's very mistrusting of humans. Of course she is. She should be. Humans caused the death of her family. She is very mistrusting of humans. She doesn't like humans. But then, after that's set in stone, apparently, she then goes to immediately trust a human. It would be realistic for her if she was, like, mistrustful of humans to a fault. Yeah, she can have faults. She can be mistrustful even when she doesn't need to be, but it seems that her being mistrustful is used for convenience instead of just a character flaw or just something caused by her really dark past. Again, the plot is the strongest part of Fliers, of this trilogy. I think that the way things are carried out really makes a lot of the dialogue suffer, and even a few of the fights, even though the climax was very exciting. I give this one book as a standalone, no spoilers, not taking into account the rest of the series or or just how much I like the concept. I give it a 4.5 out of 10 stars, and I don't want to give it that rating, but because the world building is cool, but the world building could be better. If the world building was better, if I could learn more about how Fliers fit into the world, if I could maybe get a bit more consistency with the main character, I would give it probably 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, because the plot is great, but I give this a 4.5 for now. Next, I'll be reviewing book 2, which is titled Sparrows, and I read this almost immediately after finishing Fliers, because despite what I disliked about the first book, I was really excited to see what would happen next. And what happens next is that Sidana joins a rebellion group called Sparrows, because the experiments are still going on, and I liked this book a lot better than the first one. I think that a lot of what I disliked with the first book was improved upon in this book. It has twists, and I start settling into the world, I start settling into the characters, and things get darker, which I kind of like. I like when things get dark. I got so mad at the villain. Now, stepping aside from the plot of book 2 for a minute, I'd like to acknowledge that in this book there is a lot more swearing and dark themes than in the first book. Now, don't get me wrong, I literally just said I like dark stuff, but it was a little bit shocking to have the first book kind of like a YA book, like PG-13, and then this one just goes like. Keep in mind, everything I've said is just my personal opinion, and something I dislike may be something you, the potential reader, likes. So definitely check out this trilogy if you're just up for a great fantasy experience. I give the second book a solid 7 out of 10, and thank you, Laura May, for letting me read your books. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.